Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. So hopefully everybody can hear me. Just a second here. Gonna get my camera up so I can see what I'm doing. Let me know if you can hear me okay when you come in. Hi, Lynn. There we go. Oh, looks like I'm seeing everybody's comments. That's good. Hi, Patricia. Oh, Janet's here too. Happy birthday, Janet. Hi, Teresa. So how is everybody this evening? Oops, second, I gotta see who else is here. There's a whole bunch of people. The second, I gotta scroll. Okay. Everybody's hearing me okay? Hi, Cindy. Hi, Janan. Yeah, there's a bunch of people here. Awesome. So my microphone's working okay. My mic was acting a little weird. I need to upgrade my camera, so that's the next thing I'm gonna do. So they've been so expensive because of everybody using Zoom and stuff. The cameras and the webcams have been really expensive. So I hate to have to spend like triple what they normally are to get one. So, hi, Clara. Oh, resorting all of my threads to be, oh, on the new, yeah. I doing the Floriani thing, getting them all in order, it was quite a chore. It does help if they're in color card order because then it's a little easier to find them. Hi, Julie. So how's everybody doing? Hi, Denise. So we're going to do some quilting tonight. I've been quilting all day. So I actually have most of Love Notes quilted. I'm on the last row, and then I just have to do like the outer sashings and the outer borders. I kind of got it to the point where I wanted to show you some things tonight. So um, I do have it mostly done, and I wanted to show you first, just from kind of finishing up last week. Give me a second here. Okay, so here's my wall hanging, that we were doing the quilt as you go on it, and it's all ready. I got the borders done and the sashings, and it's all quilted, so it's all quilted, and then I pinned it to the backing. So remember the backing, you can see it here. I've got my red polka dots on the back too, but then see, here's my shape flex. I put that shape flex on the backing so that the backing will stay nice and smooth. Um, Nice and smooth so that it will, I can stitch in the ditch. So, and I think all of you know what I mean by stitch in the ditch. I'm just going to take, and I like to use monofilament, and the monofilament I use is the Metler monofilament. It is like the best monofilament, and you can put it in the bobbin real easy. And then I'm just going to stitch, in these little seam allowances with the monofilament, okay? And then I'll put the binding on it. So this one's ready to go. I know some of you are doing the quilt as you go for the entire thing, and this one is just the wall hanging, like it's like the top row. All right, so I got mine all ready to go. You can see I've got it all pinned. I just haven't had a chance to stitch it yet. So I'll probably do that this week. I just haven't had time to do that. I've been working on the other one. So, okay. So that's kind of finishing up last week. But remember to put the shape flex really helps. It does make it a little stiffer, I'm not going to lie, but it sure makes the back look nicer because the back of my other one looks so nice. And I always struggle when I do this type of thing if I don't, since there's nothing on the backing, it wants to wrinkle as I'm stitching on it. And even if I use a walking foot, it does. So the shape flex really helped a lot. So anyway, this is kind of the finish up of last week's quilt as you go method. How many different patterns did I use, Janet? I only did the top row, but I used like a different one in every block just to see how they were. I mean, honestly, I own all of them, and I just kind of picked some that I liked. You don't have to buy them all, just kind of go through and look at the list on mykimberbell.com, and you could just buy, you know, if you want to do like 4 or 5 of them, and then get a border. Like this border here is Valentine Border 2, and this one I think is actually Border 1. So I used both of the Valentine borders on this one because I had to use part of it. I had to use a border here because this block was really long. Aren't they cute? I really like the quilting designs. So I'm actually going to use one of the quilting designs tonight also. I'm going to show you how you could use it traditionally and not do the quilt as you go, because I still wanted the sashings, and I'm going to do the border on this quilt with the same one. It's a little wider than this one. I made these borders a little bit narrower since it was just wall hanging. But I'm going to use this one on the other quilt, and I'll show you how I'm working on the sashing so I can show you the narrower one. And but you can use those Kimberbell quilting ones and still quilt through all the layers. You just have to skip a couple steps on it, and it works really well. And it's very easy to line them up with either your camera or the projector, depending on which machine you have. So, all right. So this one is ready to be stitched in the ditch, and then I will put the binding on it. Okay. So let's put this one over here. All right. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do a little, I know a lot of you have machines that have Design Center or IQ Designer in them. The Baby Locks have IQ Designer, and the Brothers have Design Center. And what's neat about that area of these machines, you know, the Dream Machines, the Destinies, the Luminaires, the Solarises, the Stellaires, the Altaires, have those have that section in the machine, and you can make your own designs. And I use that section. You can do a lot of stuff with it, and I've done a lot of fun little projects, but I really love it for the quilting, because then I can custom quilt my quilt the way I want it, and I can go around the appliques, and I just really enjoy doing this. I also really like those Quilt As You Go designs. They're meant to be under the appliques. So if you want to do your quilt so that it's quilted all the way through, let me grab my quilt up here so hopefully you can see it. You know, if you want to quilt your quilt more traditionally like this one, so that all of it's quilted all the way through the backing and the binding, you know, or the backing, the top, and the batting. I like my quilt quilted through all layers. Then you can't really use the Quilt As You Go ones because they're meant to be underneath the appliques. So I've been using my Design Center to take care of that, and I can still have a nice stipple, a nice decorative fill. I have a tendency to put stippling around my applique blocks because I want to focus on the applique, not on the quilting. And so you can certainly put any kind of quilting in here you wanted. I have a tendency to stipple around my appliques. And then on the plain blocks, and we'll do one of these tonight too, on the plain blocks, I use a decorative fill that's more decorative, because then it gives that plain block some interest. So anyway, we're going to do this tonight. We're going to go through this, and we've done this several times, but then the other thing I'm going to show you then is how to do this, how to do one of the sashings with the Kimberbell sashing, the Kimberbell sashing design. So we'll do the sashing that I haven't done up here. So, okay? Or we'll at least get it started anyway. Okay. So I'm going to start with my, I'm going to do one of the little mailboxes. I'm doing the last row. I got the other 3 rows done. So the first thing I have to do is I have to make a stamp, because I don't want any stitching under, you know, or over my mailbox. So I want it to go around it. So we have to make a stamp. However, this particular design was different than some of them are. Most of the designs, you just make a stamp out of the design that you use to make the block. However, this particular one had a placement line. It was just a straight line that was at the top of the block up here. And if you leave that in, it will also like stipple around this line up here. So what I did is I took that block into my software, and I removed. So that's what this one is right here, and I renamed it mailbox. This one I have removed that little placement line that was up here. So there are a few blocks on here that you have to do that. I think it was the mailbox and, oh, this one over here. I think you had to on this. I think there was a placement line. They just put a line up here, and what it does is then it wants to stipple around that line, so I need to get rid of it. So I did that one for this one too. And then I think that might have been the only ones on here. I was looking to see if there was any other ones. I think that was the only ones. Oh, the long blocks on the top, you know, the one that says "You make me smile" and "We just click." Those had like cutting lines on them. So you need to take those out of the design. So I open them up in my software and just remove them and then save the design over as another name so that I have it for the stamps that I need for here. Okay. So if some of you have questions about that, you can text me separately, and then I will, if you need help with that, let me know, because I have them all done. You know, if some of you don't have software, you really need the software to do that, because it just makes it easier, and you don't want it to be, you don't want that line in there. So, okay, this one just had this line up here. So, okay, so here's my design that I'm going to use for my stamp. This one has not got the line in it, and I'm just going to bring that up on the screen. Oh, come on. Sorry, my fingers don't always work. There we go. On the touch screen. So I've got my design up here, and I'm going to set it just like I was going to sew it. But when we get to this editing screen, I want to hit edit, and I'm going to use the stamp function. Now the stamp function looks like a flower, and it's the same on both styles of machines. It's going to be kind of a green, and it has a flower. So I'm just going to touch the flower, and then what you can see what it does is it adds a line all the way around my mailbox. Okay, you can tell it how far away from the mailbox you want it to be, and I usually set it at 0. There's been a couple of times though that I've actually made it negative so that it would go a little closer, but most of the time 0 seems to work for me. After the upgrade 2 for the Luminaires and the Solarises, they actually added a new function that you could stipple inside and outside. If you add the on button, you can see then it would want to stipple like in here in the mailbox, and I don't want that stippled. I just want it around the whole thing. So I'm just going to turn that off. But that was a new thing they added in the upgrade, which was kind of cool. So here's my stamp, and it has my outline, and I'm just going to hit memory down here at the bottom. Oops, you probably can't see it. There we go. Memory down here. And what that does is it tells me it's going to recall from my Design Center stamp pattern list. So what it did is it saved it in my Design Center so I can use it then for making my block. Okay? So I'm done with that design. I'm just going to hit the little house button up here, and I'm going to hit OK. So now we're ready to make the block. So the first thing I need to do, of course, is I need to know how big my block is, because I need to make an outline for my block. And these blocks, as I remember, were just under 6 by just under 8. Okay, so 6 by 8 roughly. All right, so I'll have to remember that measurement. And I'm going to go into my Design Center at this point. So I'm going to hit my Design Center, or IQ Designer if you have a Baby Lock. And the first thing I want to do is I've learned that I can turn off, we have to make the representation of the square, that 6 by 8 square. But I found that you can turn off the outline so that it doesn't sew, and then you don't have to skip through that last step anymore. And I like that because I can go up here to the top. These top buttons are for the line properties, and the bottom buttons here are for the fills. So we need to be worried about the lines at first. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else is I'm going to touch this button, and this lets me choose the type of line it's going to be. Well, you know what? I don't want a line. So there's like a satin stitch here, and it has a line, a red line through it. And if I choose that one, it just won't sew. It's a line, a placement line, but it will not sew. So it's just like a no sew line. And that's what I want. I'm going to hit OK. And that's what this means up here now. Okay. So I'm going to make my square, or in this case it's a rectangle. So we're going to hit the little shape button here. And I want to do the outline. So there's three options: outline, fill, and outline. So in this case, I just need the outline of my block. So I'm just going to use the outline tab, which is the first one, and I'm going to choose the square. All right, and hit OK. And then, second here, I want to size this now. So it's not quite the size I wanted, so I'm going to hit the size button. And right now it's 6.19 by 6.19. Well, I need it to be a little shorter because I'm sorry, just a little taller because it's 8. Now I always do these just a hair under the size. So usually like 7.95 instead of a full 8. So let's do 7.95. And then it was just under 6. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a little skinnier and do like 5.95. Whoops, I overshot it. So this is just the representation of the block that's on my quilt. All right. So here's my square. It's about 6 by 8, which is what we want it. Okay. Then I'm going to hit OK. I'm good with that. Now what I want is I need to get that stamp that we just made a little bit ago and put it in the middle of this. So I'm going to go back to the same button. This is the stamp button. And then remember the little flower? Here it is. So we can get these different kinds of stamps. Like these are the basic shapes here that we chose from earlier. And then they have some more shapes that are a little more complex shapes. They also have open shapes that you can choose from, which are also neat. And then the stamps that we create ourselves. So these will stay in here. A lot of people ask me, how do I get rid of these? Well, you have like 20 of them, and then when you get the 21st one, the one down here drops out. So you always have 20, and they will eventually go away, but there's always going to be 20 of them in here. Okay. So here's our little mailbox that we just did. So I'm going to grab the mailbox, and I'm going to hit OK. Now when it comes in, the default, let me see if I can get just a little bit closer. The default is for it to come into the rectangle that we already made, centered. Well, but if we look over here at our block, the bottom of the mailbox is down on the seam line. Well, so we need it to be moved down. So this is where you need to adjust the placement of your design on your block. Normally, a lot of these are just centered, so I would just leave it right where it comes in. But this one, I need to bring it down to the seam line down here. So I'm going to go ahead. This is selected. You can see the red line here. I'm going to hit the size button. We're not going to resize it, but that's where the move buttons are, is under size. So I'm just going to move this down to the bottom of the line. Now, the one thing that is a little different about this one is that the design that we used and made the stamp out of has a satin stitch. Let me show you over here. There's actually a satin stitch on the bottom of this, and when you put this together, you actually sew the satin stitch into the seam allowance. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to drop this design just slightly below the line because that also had the satin stitch on the bottom of it. So I know that I have about a 1/4 of an inch on the bottom that's not actually on there. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop it down just a little further than the bottom, because and then when you read the directions, it'll tell you that. So that'll remind you in the directions. So I'm just going to drop that down just a little bit further than the bottom of my rectangle. Okay. So I've got that place where I want it. This way it looks pretty good. You know, side to side should be fine. I just brought it straight down with the center arrow button. And then I'm going to click OK. So I think I'm happy with that. Now, again, I like to put stippling around my applique blocks. You're more than welcome to do any kind of decorative stitch. So now we need to add a fill. So the fill buttons are these buttons right here. I'm going to click on the fill properties button, and it gives me options. This is a standard fill, just like a regular filled embroidery design. This is my stipple, okay? And if you wanted to use a decorative stitch, which looks just perfect on here as well, you can hit this button, hit select, and then there are, on the Luminaire, with the 2 upgrades, there are 42 different fills that I can choose from. Okay, we are going to use one of those in a little bit, but on this particular design, I want to use a stipple. So I'm going to choose the center one. And then you also, at this point, kind of look at your block, and you need to choose a color here that you can see, because when I go to turn my projector on, I want to make sure that I can see my stippling, and the red will be fine because I've got a white background here. Okay, so I'm just going to hit OK. I've got stippling and OK, and now I need to put the stippling in here. So I'm going to grab my little fill button or the paint pot, and then I'm going to touch between the outside outline and then my mailbox, and that sets the design, the stippling in there, and you can see it left the hole where the mailbox is going to be. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that. Looks pretty good. Looks like my block on my quilt here. And so then I'm going to hit next at the bottom so that I can go in and I can make some adjustments to the stitch length and maybe the density of my stippling. Okay, now this is in inches right now. I have a hard time digitizing in inches, so I always have to switch back to millimeters for the digitizing. So I can do that easily by going up here to my settings page up here, and I can go to, it's page 8 on the Dream Machines and 9 on the Luminaire, and go back to millimeters temporarily. And then I'm going to click OK at the bottom. So now the stitch length says 2 millimeters. Well, I know that's pretty small, so I would like it to be 2.5. So I'm going to do that. And then my density is at 5, which is pretty small. This is not a real big block, so I don't think it needs to be a lot bigger. So I thought maybe I would try about 6 on this one. It's a little bit bigger, and it won't be quite so densely stippled then. You can play around with this, you know, do some samples. That's how I kind of came up with 6, because I knew it sewed out well. Some of the bigger quilts that I do maybe around 8 or 9, depending on the size of your quilt and how big a block you have. So kind of make some samples. You know, you may have to just sew it out on a piece of scrap fabric first, just to see how big you want your stipple to be. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. And then this, and so it changes it here. So you can kind of see it's a little less dense now. This next line is that it will leave a slight gap between the outside and the stippling, which is good because my block was just ever so slightly narrow anyway, so that way that'll save me hitting the outside of the block. And then this is not on the Dream Machines, but the last option gives me the option of having a single line stipple or a triple line, like a triple stitch stipple. I prefer the single line, so I'm going to leave it on the default. That's what defaults. Okay. Now I think I'm ready to do this. I think I'm ready to sew now, so I'm going to hit set and OK. And now it's come up here on my screen, and I'm ready for embroidery. So this is on the embroidery side of the machine. I'm going to go ahead and hit embroidery. Now, depending on which machine you have, I'm going to use my projector tonight. If you have a Dream Machine or a Destiny, you will need to use the little camera, scan your block in, and then you can adjust the placement of your stippling with the camera, okay? I'm going to use my projector tonight, and I'm going to do that. So I'll bring the camera over here so you can see. So my projector is right here, okay? Now the first thing I want to do is I'm going to kind of get this close. So you can kind of see here. I'm going to grab the design with my finger and just kind of get it close to this, roughly the center of the block. I mean, I'm pretty close, so we'll have to adjust it a little bit, but I just like to kind of get it close, okay? Then I'm going to come over here, and the projector on this machine is the little, it looks like the little cone. We're going to touch that, and it's going to dim the lights a little bit, and then it's going to turn the projector on. Okay, so the projector, of course, does not show me the entire design. I can pull the projector around on the screen with this rectangle shape, okay? And then I can see where my actual design is. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over here. Oh, and then you move, let me show you one more thing over here. You move the design with the arrows, and the projector, you can drag it with your finger. Okay, so there's two things you have to use. So I can move my design with these arrows and the projector with my finger. Now I'm looking at my design. I don't know, I think you can probably see the red pretty well on here. I tried to pick a color I thought you could see. Okay, now you can see my design's way up here, and that's a little too high, so I'm going to use those arrows and I'm going to move it down, and we'll see how straight I actually hooped. Sometimes I do pretty well. I surprised myself. Okay, so we're going to move it over too. You can kind of see it's moving around, and I'm just kind of got the projector up on the top left-hand corner right now. So I'm going to move it over to the left a little bit more and up a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Actually, I think I did pretty well. So I'm going to drag the projector over to the other corner now and check here. And this looks pretty good. I think it could come to the right just a little bit. We'll go back and look at the other corner. This is how I set this up. I just kind of go, and then I'm going to drag the projector down now. We're going to look at this area right in here. Okay, it looks like it's going to hit my mailbox a little bit. This one's always really hard to line up because you don't know exactly where the bottom needs to be, exactly because of that satin stitch at the bottom. So sometimes I have a little trouble matching these up, but this is looking pretty good. So I'm real close to the edge over here. It's not going over the edge though, and then we're getting down here to the bottom, so we need to check the bottom here. Now see, I'm kind of close down here. Can you see it? Let me see if I can get a little bit higher so you can kind of see it. I'm a little close, and of course I've got this black border, so I think we need to go up a couple of bumps here. That looks better. And then I'll drag the projector over. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. And then I'll come up. I just keep driving, and I go back and forth, until I'm happy with where I've got it. And then we'll try the top again to make sure it didn't get up too high. I think that'll be okay. Sometimes I even have to go back a screen and reduce the size of my square, because every now and then it'll be just a little bit too long and it will not lay nicely on the block. So I think I'm okay. I'm going to check the bottom again to make sure that I have a little teeny bit of wiggle room down here yet. So I think we'll be okay. Okay, and if I had just the camera, I would have scanned, and I would do the same thing with my camera. Okay, this projector is pretty awesome, and I use it almost all the time now. I do occasionally scan still, but I really love this projector. It really makes things very, very accurate. Okay, so I think I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and bunch this quilt up just a little bit. I'm going to hit OK on my screen so that my camera turns off. And what I'm using for thread is I am using a Pima cotton, 100% Pima cotton thread. It's white, and I've got the same thread in the bobbin. I'm just using a number 11 needle. So, and this is real thin thread. I really like this thread. I normally use my quilting thread like I use on my long arm, but I'm almost out of white, so I didn't think I'd have enough to finish it without having to go to the store. So I didn't really want to go to the store today. So I chose my cotton piecing thread. I often piece with this thread. So, okay, so let's try this out and see how we did here. I'm going to go ahead and put the foot down, and let's see how we do here. I'm going to hold this up a little bit. It's going to start up in that corner. Hold this back just a little bit so you can see the whole block. Now this quilt had 3 of these little mailboxes, so I will just save this in my machine, and I will use it for, I already did one of my mailboxes over here, but I will save it, and then I can do the other one with the same design. So it goes over to the edge, and it's going to go down the side. I have this in my 9.5 by 14, my 9.5 by 14 snap hoop. The reason I chose the bigger one for the bottom row is I could get like 3 or 4 blocks done all in one hooping. And the one block over to the left that I will do a little later, that block is actually 8 by 10, so you have to use this bigger hoop to hoop the whole thing, or to be able to quilt the whole block. So I chose the bigger one for down here. Normally on these Kimberbell quilts, for the most part, I quilt with the 8 by 12 snap hoop. I like to quilt with a smaller hoop because it's easier to handle, I feel, like when you're hooping and stuff. So for the most part, I do the 8 by 12, but this one had a couple of large blocks in it. Most of the Kimberbell quilts have, relatively small blocks, so I can get by with the 8 by 12 most of the time. It's just easier to handle, I feel. Anybody have any questions so far? Is this making sense to everybody? I've been working at this since about, I don't know. I started this about 11 o'clock, I suppose. I've got most of the quilt quilted. I just have to do a couple of sashings. I have to do the outside borders and the outside sashings yet. One more sashing. We'll do a sashing tonight, and then just finish up this bottom row. And sometimes I'll just kind of hold my fingers down here and watch my hands, because that black border, I don't want to get any white thread on it. And if you do, every now and then you do, then I've got a black Sharpie marker that helps out with that little problem. Wouldn't be the first time a black Sharpie marker has come in handy. Okay, so it's going up the other side. I think it's about done. And it's done. So that whole block is now quilted. I'll get the camera a little closer when it turns off here so you can see the quilting. Now I have a tendency, can you see it? It looks real nice and neat. And I will do then this other block over here with that same design because I already have it done. So I'm just going to hit the save button. We'll go back over here so you can see. Hit OK. And then here the memory button. I'm going to hit memory and then the machine. So that saves that design so I can use it again on the other block that's over here. Okay? All right, so there's a lot of applique blocks. You do the same procedure with all of the quilt. Get the design that you created the applique with, make the stamp, save it in Design Center, and then go in and make your blocks, the size of your block, grab that stamp that you made, and then add the stippling or the decorative stitch around the outside, and then stitch it out. So that's, basically I just I do the same thing over and over again. Once you do it a couple times, it gets really easy. So, and then I just do the whole quilt that way. before we end tonight, I'll take the quilt out of the hoop so you can see the other ones that I've already quilted, because I've actually quilted all the rows above me here. So, okay. So, there's all these applique blocks in here. You do them all basically the same way. Then the second type of block that's in here, and we're going to do that one of those as well, are these little blocks that are up here that are just little plain blocks. Okay, so I have a couple of them right above the mailbox here that we're going to do. And those I'm just going to use some sort of a decorative stitch. Now I have a tendency to be kind of boring, and I find a decorative stitch that I like. And then I use that for all the same size blocks. So like these are all 2-inch square. They finish 2 inches. So I use the same stippling or the same fill for those 2-inch blocks. Some of the quilts have like 2-inch blocks, 4-inch blocks, 6-inch, you know, some of them are all plain. So I kind of pick a design for each size and then kind of keep that consistent. So you can do whatever you want with the quilting. You can make every single block different if you want, whatever you want to do. So in this case, I have one chosen for my my little 2-inch blocks. Okay, so I'm going to go into my design center to create that block for you, and then I will use the one I've been using just to make sure that it's the same, because I have a whole row of these things right next to each other. So, but we just need to create the square. So we said these squares, I always measure, but they were 2-inch squares finished. They started out as 2.5-inch squares, and they are finished 2 inches. So I need to create my square. The first thing I want to do is to tell, I don't want the outline to sew though. I just want oh, you know what? I'm going to do this differently. We're going to use the fill. So we're just going to go to the shapes. We're going to do this one a little differently, because remember I told you there's 3 tabs here. This is the outline. This is the fill. This just needs to be a fill. We don't need an outline this time. So I'm just going to touch that one so we don't have to fix anything. I'm going to touch my square. That's the one I want. So this is just a fill. There's no outline. Okay, so here's my square. Now it's probably too big, so let's take a look at the size. Whoops, I'm still in millimeters, so now I have to go back, because I have to go back to inches. So I'm going to go back in the settings and go back to inches. Okay, yeah, so it's 6 by 6, so that's too big. So we remember it needs to be 2 by 2, and I am going to go just under 2 by 2. And I'm using the button up here that is the button that takes it down in aspect ratio. So it's taking it down as a square. So all the sides will be the same. All right, so we're going to go down to probably about 1.95. Just to make sure we got a little bit of wiggle room around the outside edge. Okay, and I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click OK. And now remember, this is a fill. So we need to use the fill properties, which is the second group of buttons. And this one I want it to be a decorative fill. So I'm going to click the button with the decorative fills. I'm going to click select. And I think the red should be fine. I think I might have made my original design in yellow, but I think the red would be okay. So, but I know the one I really like this 016. It's kind of like a diagonal, like hash marker, like X's, but it has a cute little star in it. So that's the one I chose for this one. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to leave it as red. I think the red will be fine. And now I need to set those stitches. So you can see I've got it changed here, but I have to set it with the paint pot. So I'm going to touch the paint pot and touch my square. And there's my little design with the decorative stitch in it. So I'm ready to go to the settings. I'm going to go look at the click next and look at the settings. Now we can change, whoops, sorry here. We can change the size of this design. If we want to make it bigger or smaller, we can do that. Now, I believe I left it at 100%. So if I want to change that, I click on this, and I can go 100, 105, 110, 115. So you can go up or down in 5-degree increments. okay? You can also change the angle. So if you want to change it a different angle so that it's like this instead, or like this, you can use that. That's what the second thing is. The third thing is, originally when they did these decorative fills, there was always an outline around the outside edge of it. And then they gave us an option of turning that off. Well, now the default setting is on the off position. Yeah, I think it looks nice, Denise. I liked this one because it's not too much, but it makes those plain blocks look more decorative. So I'm going to leave the outline off. I do not want that. Now, the Dream Machine and the Destiny do not have the last three buttons. These are new. They give us the option of skewing this design in two different ways. So that's what these next two buttons are on the Luminaire and the Solaris. And the bottom button allows us to either have a triple stitch decorative fill or a single stitch. And I like the single because then it's not so dense. It doesn't go over it so many times. So I usually change mine to that so that it isn't quite so dense of quilting. Okay, so we're going to click OK. And then at this point, I think I'm happy with that. It looks good. And I'm going to click Set. And what it's going to do, it's going to go over to the embroidery side of the machine. You can see it says embroidery at the bottom. And then we would be ready to sew this. Okay? So to just make sure that I have done this correctly, I'm not going to use the one that I just created. I'm going to go back and use the one I saved just to make sure that I did not change anything. I want them all to match. Okay? So I'm just going to hit my house button, and I'm going to go back to my embroidery and to my machine because I know the one that I used is right. Whoops, where'd it go? I lost it. It's down here. I saved it in the machine right here. So this is the one I've been using. So I want all of mine to match. So that's why I'm going to use this one and click Set. So and you can see I did it in the yellow. I think I might change it to red so that you could see it a little bit better on the screen. But I can do that. I'm ready. I'm in the editing screen here. Make it a little higher so you can see the word edit. And I can actually change the color of this right now by using edit and then see the little thread spool with the little colors on it. I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to make it a red just so that it's a little bit more visible on the screen when we're ready to show it with the projector. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. Think that, yeah, so now see it's red on the screen and it's going to be a little bit more visual. And then I'm going to click embroidery, so I'm ready to embroider. Okay, so now with these, I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to turn my projector on, and I'm going to be moving the design with my finger and pulling it up. And then I'm going to turn the projector on, and then I will have the little arrows down here to move the design, and then I will move the projector with my finger. Okay, so they have two ways to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn. The first thing I like to do is I'm going to get this close to where I want it. So I'm just going to grab it with my finger and pull it up to approximately the center of my first square I want to do here. Okay, you can see I kind of got the machine up here so it's about in the center there. Okay, then I'm going to turn on my camera. So here's my camera, my projector. Turn that on, and it's going to think for a second. Takes a second for it to turn on. Okay, and then I'm going to move my projector with my finger. And see, this one is small, so see, I can see the entire thing all at once. So we're going to go over here. I'll go over here so you can see. Hopefully you can see. I think you can see it pretty well. Okay, so here's my design right here. I have the arrows now to move my design. So see, my design's over to the left a little too far, and it's down a little too far. So I need to move it up. Yeah, I think you can see this pretty well. It's working pretty well tonight. Sometimes it works better than others. It's the camera position sometimes, I think. Hit it one more time to the right. And I don't want to get too close to that black line up there because I don't want any stitches up on my black border. But see, there's my design. It's going to sew right in that little square right there. I think I'm happy with that, so I'm going to hit OK. And now we're going to sew. And I always kind of watch with my hand here because I can move that sashing back just a little bit if I need to. And we're going to do this little square. So you can do any kind of things. You know, the Dream Machines and the Destinies don't have quite as many options for fills, but they do have, with the upgrades, they have like 15, I believe, if they have both upgrades in them. So you do have quite a few, and then the Luminaires and the Solarises now have like 40, so it is pretty cool that we have more options available to us. Okay. There we go. So there's one block. I got that whole block done. And then I've got one more over here to do, so we'll do one more. So I'm going to use that same design, and I'm just going to pull it over so that it's kind of roughly on the center of the next block over here, like that. I did that with I just slid it over with my finger. Now I'm going to turn on my projector, and let's see where it ends up here. I like it when the blocks are small like this, then you can see the entire block all at once. So I'm going to pull the projector up so that's over my design, and I'm too far to the right, so I'm going to, or left, I'm going to move it to the right. On this one it may be a little harder to see because it's of the stripes, I think. And then I'm going to move it down because it's too high. I'm doing that with the arrows. Well, let's see. I think I need to go back up one. I think that looks pretty good. And every now and then I will have to use the rotate button because I may have, you know, not. I actually hooped pretty straight, believe it or not. So my quilt's pretty straight, so I didn't have to use the rotate buttons. But I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera and quilt this block. And when you're doing these, yes, it does take a little while, but I can usually quilt maybe 2 or 3 blocks in each hooping. If you use a bigger hoop, you might be able to do more, but I find it a little bit unwieldy with the large hoops, so I usually try to use my 8x12. And I also use this 9.5 by 14 quite a bit because of the, like this one has a 10 inch long, and it's 8 inches wide. So see, I had to use the bigger hoop for that one. So, and I'm just watching my sashing up here because I don't want white stitches in it. I think I did pretty well though. All right, and there is another quilted block. So I still have another mailbox and a couple more of those little blocks to do over to the right over here, and then I also have hold the camera up here a little bit. I have my little flower block to do. Now this is another one that you have to pull that design down towards the bottom. So make sure you're looking at your block in relationship to where you're placing it. My little birdie block, and then this bigger one. I have this bigger one to do yet. Okay, so are there any questions about quilting with the Design Center? Because we're going to do another type of quilting on the sashings. Now I want to show you that I've been using the Kimberbell designs, sashing and border designs, but I've been using them with the more traditional quilting too because I really like them. I just don't need to do the batting lines. So I was going to show you that too. Is there any other questions about this so far? You've seen me do this several times, so I think you're getting a little bit more familiar with it. And of course, if you don't have the projector, use your scanner, scan, and then you can move your design to fit where your scans are. So, okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this out, and we're gonna switch it because I want to do this black border up here. We're going to do this black sashing up here. Okay. And I'm going to flip the quilt around here. Now you can see I pin basted. I am a pinner. I don't use sprays. And whatever works for you, I prefer the pin basting. And you do have to be a little careful though, you know, that you don't get the pins caught on things or in the foot, so I'm going to have to roll this up a little bit. Just a second. It is stuck. I love the magnetic hoops because I don't have to remove the quilt basically ever from the machine. I can just move it around and I don't have to remove it from the machine. So it's much easier than having to take the hoop in and out and in and out. So if you have magnetic hoops, if you're going to be doing this procedure, it is much, much easier with the magnetic hoops. Okay, so I need to get this, oops, moved a little bit over a little bit. So we can get so we're going to work on this sashing here. So I'm going to try to hoop this as straight as I can. We'll see how we do here. Okay, and the top of see, I'm going to have to come down. I'm going to have to go this way. I have to bring it down this way. It's a little too high because I know I'm going to not have enough space at the top there. Whoops, I've got a pin. That's why I'm stuck. Okay. I'm going to try to get this as straight as I can. When I do the sashings, if it's fairly straight, it does help. So I kind of take a little more time and try to get it straight in the hoop, or as close as I can. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use those beautiful sashing designs, border designs or sashing designs that Kimberly has done, but I'm going to do it with this traditional quilt. I also did the other quilt this way, and I found that it worked very well, and I could still use those cute, these are kind of specific to this quilt. You know, they brought these out when this quilt came out this summer, so I thought that was kind of neat, and I wanted to use the little hearts. So, all right, so what I'm going to do, I'm trying to get this all, make sure it's all kind of straight here. There, and see, I never took the quilt really out of the hoop. I just left, or the quilt out of the machine. I basically just turned it around. So, all right. So I think that's pretty good. I am going to take these pins out. Is everybody still with me? Can you still hear me okay? Everybody's very quiet tonight. Okay, just a second. Can't get a hold of it. There we go. All right, so the way I did these is I'm going to use the sashing or the border. They call them borders. So they have like designs that are called borders, and then they're all different sizes. So this sashing is 1 inch. So we're going to use a 1 inch one, and it's off of mykimberbell.com, and in there they have these beautiful quilting designs now, and they just had some new ones up this week, some for St. Patrick's Day, and these were Valentine, they called them Valentine Borders. So I believe this one, I wrote it down here, this one was number 2. This was border 2. And border 1 is what I'm going to do the big border with, but I won't do one of those tonight. I'm not quite ready to do that yet. So, okay. But we will do a sashing, and I'm going to do the big borders the same way, just with a larger design. Okay. Get this all in here. All right. So I'm going to go to my stick, and I'm going to find my sashing or border designs. They're on my stick. They are under Kimberbell Quilting. And then this one was the Valentine, let's see, I think it was under Borders. It's up at the top here. Border, and then they have Valentine. This one was 2 that I used for my little sashings here. And I'm going to go to my embroidery files. Now, the one thing about these that you will find is that they're never going to turn out the exact length you need. You're very likely going to have to stop it at the end. Okay, so just be aware of that. You can just sit there and hit the button. That's what I do. But I know this one takes it came out pretty close if I used 2 10-inch length ones and then 1 12-inch one at the end. So that's why I have this longer hoop on here, so I have a little more wiggle room for the length. That made it easier to get it set. So I'm going to go ahead, and we'll actually use 2 designs to do this. So there's one that says 1 by 10, and there's one that says 1 by 12. So I'm going to use the 1 by 10 first, and start the first 2 hoopings with that, and then the third one I'll use the 12-inch one. So I just brought it up. Here's the design. Okay, now these are meant to be quilt as you go. So there's going to be a bunch of extra lines in here that we don't need. However, I found that if I leave the lines in there, it helps me line it up because I have those lines to line up along the edge of my sashing, and it really helped me to do it. The only thing I was having trouble with this afternoon, though, was that if you look, I don't know if you can see it very well, but the actual quilting in the center, which is the little hearts, is really dark green. So I'm going to change the color of that to like yellow so I can see it on this black. Okay, so let's set it first. And then when I get to this screen, remember how we changed the color of the last little design? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to go down to where the colors are. And I want the last piece, which is the quilting, which is this dark green at the bottom. I'm going to change that. Let's change it to yellow because I think I'll be able to see. That yellow pretty well on the black. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change that, and I'm going to hit OK. All right, now I'm going to hit embroidery. And hopefully I got this in a good place for it to work. I've had to rehoop a couple times today. So I'm going to take this design, I'm going to pull it over again, just like I did before, to kind of in the center of my strip here. And I'm not exactly sure where it's going to end up at the top, but we'll look. All right. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my projector again. And if you have this only the scanner, just scan, and then you can line it up this way. All right. So here's my projector. I'm going to pull it up to the top and see where the top of my strip needs to be. So I don't know if you can see this very well. And can you see the lines here? This is the top right here, and it's a little bit, as you can see, it's a little bit low. So I'm going to have to move it up. I want to go up to where the seam meets this sashing meets this one. So I'm going to start it right on that line, that seam line. So it's a little bit low yet, so I'm still going up. Gonna move my projector here. Whoops, it might be too high now. Yep. Hopefully you can see my hoop is going to hit this a little bit because I'm having to move so far up. Okay, I think I need to come down just a little bit more. There's a line right along here that I can see, and you probably can't. It's kind of a dark color that's in the quilt as you go lines, and I can see where my seam line is, and I can see where that line is, and I want those to kind of match up. So I'm kind of moving it up a little bit. Not quite. I think we're getting pretty close here. A couple more little moves. I think that'll be good. Okay. And then I've got these lines on either side that are those quilt as you go lines, which we're not going to use, but they help me line this up because I can see that I'm too far to the left right now. So I'm going to move this over until I get these lines matched up to the edge of my sashing. And this works really well. You just have to remember to skip them before you start quilting, because we just want to do the last step. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the projector down. Let's see how we did as we get lower. So I still need to go over a little bit, and I might actually have to do a rotation as well. I'm not sure yet, but let's keep going down. See how I did. That looks pretty good. And I'm using the lines here to help me, so I'm still a little off this way. So I might actually need to rotate it just a little bit. I'm just going to go all the way down to the bottom, and I still might have to rotate it just a little bit, but that looks pretty good. And I'm just working my way down, looking at the pieces, and then it ends right here. Okay, and that looks pretty good. I must have gotten it fairly straight, but I can see the yellow lines here. The yellow I don't think you can see as well. I can really see it on the black, but I know it's because of the black lines that you can't see it, or the black fabric. Makes it hard. Whoops, I think I moved it up too high. Let's move it back down again here. Oops. But I'm looking for the seam allowance here, and then I'm using those lines to help me line it up so that it runs right down the middle of my sashing. And that looks pretty good all the way down. I just wish you could see it a little bit better. Maybe I'll try doing it in red and see if you can see it. Sometimes I can't see the red very well on the black, though. The yellow works pretty good on the black. Okay, but not on the camera. Okay, so it ends here, and I've got this little heart sashing that's going to go up the middle. So, at this point, let's go back over here to the screen. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to skip through all of the lines. We don't need those because we're not doing quilt as you go. So I'm going to hit the little positive negative needle and my arrow, and I'm going to go down to the last step, which is just the quilting. It's just the little quilting bit that we want. Okay? Now I'm going to have to hold this up because I'm kind of up at the box, so I have to kind of hold my quilt up here. I'm going to hit OK, and I think I'm ready to quilt. So I'm just going to quilt this right here so you can see it go. And it's just going to quilt that little design down the middle of that little sashing. And this works so well with the projector, and I think it will work fine with the camera as well, you know, with the scanning camera. But this works so slick, and I could use these same little designs even though I was traditionally quilting my quilt. Yeah, the color is important when you're working, especially when you're working with the black. The black is really hard to see on the screen. I can see the yellow really well, but you can't see yellow. I might try a red, but I don't know that I can see it very well then. So we'll see. We're going to do another hooping here so you can see this. Okay. So there's my little. There's my little sashing. See, I've got the first one done. And it ended right here. So now I have a mark to go by. There's a little tail that comes down out of this heart, and I'm going to aim for that when I go to put the next one on, because then that line that was going across the design can kind of line up with that, and then I know my next one's going to start right where I want it to. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully unhoop this. Pull it up. Try to keep it straight if I can. Just kind of fold it up. Okay, and I've got the top of my hoop is right. I got to feel it. It's way up here, so we can go up a little higher. I don't want it to get too high. There we go. So it's right up here. I don't know if you can see my hand, but we're going to go ahead and put this down. I think we're okay now. This goes up here. Take this other pin out. And let's see how straight we stayed here. Looks pretty good. Now the end of my design is up here, and it's going to be a little hard to see, but I think when I bring it down, I think you'll be able to see it. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use the same design that I just used, the one that we just used, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull it over so I know it's fairly close to the center of my strip, but then I'm going to have to turn my camera on and see where we landed otherwise. So here's my projectors ready to go here, see? So let's go up to the top. Pull it down here so you can see it. I think we're pretty close. I'm a little high. So I'm a little high on it. And you can kind of see the lines out here, okay? So I'm a little high, so I'm going to pull it down. And I'm looking for the end of that little heart. It's right here. And I want the top of my line to go right on top of that. And then everything will line up nicely. Well, it looks pretty good. for the height. So I've got that line is like right along the bottom of that little heart. I think I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to have to move this over because it's a little bit too far to the right, or to the left, I'm sorry. I have to move it to the right. So I'm moving it over. And then I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think I got this fairly straight, so let's pull this projector down, and I'm just going to go down my strip here and see how I did. See, I think I'm a little crooked now. So I'm going to take my angles. You can do 1 degree, 10 degrees. I think 1 degree might be enough to move it. I think that will be enough. And now I can move it back over a little bit. So I think that's better. And sometimes I even just pull my quilt just a hair in the hoop to compensate for the angle. And sometimes I can fix it more by pulling a little bit on the quilt, but I try not to. Let's see here. See how we did. I think that's better. I just used about 1 degree because it looks better now. I'm going down and checking to all the way to the bottom. Looks pretty good. But those lines really help to get it lined up. I found that if I left because I had been taking the lines out and just using the center, but it's much easier to line it up if you have them on there because then it helps you down the strip. So I think I'm happy with that. Okay, so now remember we have to get to the end. So I'm going to go down to the last step, which is just the quilting, because that's all I want. I'm going to hit OK, and then we're going to quilt this. Yep, that's good, Gail. Gail said that sometimes she uses a piece of paper along the strip so she can see the edges. And my fabric's really white, so it actually worked really well just with white fabric because I could see it real well. Unfortunately, with that yellow, I have to have the yellow to see the design, and it probably doesn't show up on the screen. The red really shows up pretty well on the screen, but I have to have yellow on the black because I can't, the red's just too dark. Alright, so it's just going down. So these were the two 10-inch ones. These were 10-inch 1 by 10. So the last one I'm going to do a 12-inch one, and then I am going to have to stop it at the very end because it's not, nothing's ever going to come out perfectly even. So we always have to we'll have to make it work at the other end. So it'll be fine. Now the other thing I found with these is make sure that you are stopping or starting at the same edge each time so that they kind of, your borders kind of look even and I've been starting at the same side. So like I started on the left side of my quilt and worked to the right. Okay, so that looks good. So here, and we're ready for our last hooping because I knew this one only was going to take 3 hoopings. So, okay, so I'm going to slide this again, put my hoop up here. We're going to slide this again. Now this time I'm going to get a different design though. I'm going to use, whoops, second here. This time we're going to use a 12-inch design, and I will have to stop it because it will be just a little bit too long. I think we'll be fine. Get these. You want to make sure that there's not many pins under your hoop. If you get a bunch of pins underneath the hoop, it really does not stay very well. It wants to slide on you. So I always try to make sure I don't have much for pins underneath here. Okay. So here's my last bit of border. It starts way up here, so I'll move the camera here in a minute so you can see it. But I am going to get that other design now. So I'm going to get the 12-inch one. Go back to the beginning, and then go back to embroidery, and it's on my stick, and it's in Kimberbell Quilting, Borders, oops, Borders Valentine 2, and PES, and then I'm going to get my 1 by 12 this time. and set it. Now I am going to change that color again. Let me try doing the red and see if I can see it. I think you might be able to see it better. So I'm going to edit, color. I'm going to touch the last step, which is what I want. And we'll make it red. So I'll see if you can see it. Hopefully, maybe you'll be able to see it a little better. I'm not sure that I would be able to, but we'll be okay, I think. All right, well, then we're going to hit embroidery. And then I'm going to pull this over with my fingers so that I'm roughly on the center of my strip, and I may have to move it up a little bit. So now we're going to turn the camera on. And I will do the borders the same way, the big borders the same way, but I'm going to use, I think it's Valentine Border 1 that I'm going to use on those. So, okay, so let's go to the top with the projector and see where we're at here. So I'm a little high. Not sure you're going to be able to see the red either, so with the black it's hard. It's easier on the lighter color. So I'm going to move this down with the arrows till I'm down to, with that line, right on the end of my little hearts right here. Oops, overshot it a little bit. So I'm going to move it up a little bit. And then I know that's going to be matched up nicely. And then it looks like to me I need to move the whole thing over to the right just a little bit so that it's in the center. Looks pretty good. I must have gotten fairly straight this time, so I'm just going to run the projector down the strip to see if I'm pretty lined up. Yeah, I don't think you can see the red probably any better than the yellow. The black strips are hard. That's why I try to do light colored blocks when we do this, but I knew my strips were going to be black, so nothing I can do about that. They're just black. So let's see here. I've got cat hair in here. Gigi was in here helping me earlier. That looks pretty good. I can just barely see the red. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Must have been pretty straight. Now, when I get down here to the bottom, right here, the design actually extends out into this. So we're going to have to stop it when it gets down here. So I am going to have to watch it when it gets down here because I want to stop it before it gets to that little, when it gets to that little seam right here. Okay? You could see the yellow better. Yeah, I could too. So, but I can see it well enough to finish it. The yellow is hard to see even on the, even for me, it's a little hard to see, but it's better than the white, than the red. So I wasn't sure. Sometimes it, just changing the color makes a difference, but all right, I think we'll be okay though. So at this point, I need to skip all those lines because we don't need them. And I'm going to go down to the last piece, but I am going to have to watch and turn it off when I get to the end, because it's not going to be an even number. It's not going to come out even, so we're just going to have to watch it. All right, so I think I'm ready to go. Here we go. And this is how I'm going to do all my sashings and my borders. And you can't even see where they start and stop. I've been very happy with this. This works very well. And I really like their borders because some of them are very specific to the quilt that you're doing. Because this one had like Valentine's, and then the bigger borders, have the little bird on it and the letters. So I thought that'd be really cute. And then I liked these little hearts. So I thought it would work very well. So then I can use these on my traditionally quilted ones as well as the Quilt As You Go. All right, so we're getting down here. I'm going to get my finger up here on my button so I can stop it. Because I want it to stop right where that seam is. All right, so we're getting close here. Now the one thing that this machine has that the Dream Machines don't, that I just love. Okay, I need a couple more stitches. Okay, the one thing that this machine has that the Dream Machines do not have is that it has the ability to tie off in the embroidery now. So I can tie off that end with that, but with my little polka dot button, and then cut it off because it didn't stop. So like at the end there would have been a tie off, but where I stopped, there wasn't one. So I wanted that to tie off so it wouldn't come undone there. So I can tie that off. That's the one thing I love about they added this in one of the upgrades not too long ago. It was about a year ago, I think, and that is so nice because then I just hit the reinforcement button and tie off right here. And you can also use that when you're changing your bobbin. So like if you're worried about something coming out, you can use that when you're changing your bobbin. So anyway, I just stopped it. This is where the seam is right here. And let me show you my sashing. Second here, we're going to actually take it out of the machine this time. Turn this around. So there's my whole sashing. And I did that in 3 hoopings. So it's right across here. Okay, and I got all the other ones done in the center. I did all the other ones in the center here the same way. And I started all from the same side. So I started over here so that they all, started out the same, and they looked very similar. They were parallel and they looked good from each side. So I always kind of start from the same side. And then when I go to do the outside ones, you have to look and see, like the outside sashings here. I'm going to do the 2 side ones first because the seam is right here. So I'll do the 2 side ones first and stop at the seam, and then I'll do the longer ones from this seam here to the seam on the other end. Okay, and then I'll start from the same side each time. So they look normal, like they look the same. So, okay, and then like when I do my big borders, I'm going to do the same thing with that. Just pick the wider ones. So like these borders turn out to be 4-inch. So you want a 4-inch border, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing. So like on this one, the side borders were put on first. So I'm going to start up here at the seam allowance and work down the border and stop at the seam allowance down here. And then I will do the top and the bottom from edge to edge. And you're going to have to measure in approximately 1/4 inch, from your start. You can start in just a little bit because you're going to have your binding that's going to go around the outside edge. But I'll do my big borders the same exact way I just did these. And it really helps with those lines on there because then you can really line this up. So I've been enjoying using those border designs. And I think they had some new ones this time. They had some St. Patrick's Day ones. For the Luck of the Gnome pillow, and I'm hoping they'll have some Easter ones before we do Happy Easter, because there's borders on that too. So I was hoping they'd have some for that as well. Okay, so I'm getting close here to being done, and of course I just got my pin stuck in my foot, but I did something that I told you not to do, right? And take that pin out of there. So I'm going to re-hoop. I'm going to try to finish this tonight. I'm going to do this little section here and do another mailbox and my 2 little blocks. And then I'm going to go over to this side over here and I've got 2 blocks here, and I've got the big one on the end to do. And then I will do the sashings, the outside sashings, and the outside borders tomorrow. And I will have this quilt quilted. So it's been a fun day. I've enjoyed it. It's been nice and quiet here watching TV and quilting a quilt. Okay, so are there any questions? I'll put some pictures up as soon as I get it more finished. But I tried to get as much done as I could. So like I'll show you my pretty block that I did at the top here. So that one big block. Oops, it's got some thread stuck. That one big block at the top here was very plain. So see, I put that really pretty decorative stitch fill in there. See that pretty decorative fill with it's kind of like feathers. Because that was kind of a plain block, and it was pretty big. So I've got that one all done, and then I've got my little cameras. So yeah, this is really. So it's getting close. I'll have it done. Hopefully I'll have the rest of the blocks done tonight. So I'll take some pictures when I get this one done. And then next week we'll put the embellishments on. You do need to have, I would recommend having the binding on before you put your embellishments too, so you don't mess up your embellishments while you're flopping it around trying to get the binding on. But if you want to get those designs, some of these designs that I'm using from Kimberbell, make sure you go to mykimberbell.com and you can order the quilting designs there. Aren't they cool? I really enjoy quilting this way. I like the back of the quilt. I don't know if you can see this. If I hold it up, maybe you can see some of the back. I like it quilted through the backing. That's my favorite way to quilt. I like it to look like a traditional quilt. So there's my, it's quilted through the backing. And I think it hangs a little bit better, and they're usually not quite as stiff. See, this quilt is not particularly stiff. The other piece is much stiffer, and it's because there's also more stabilizer in it. So this is stiffer than that quilt. But I think this looks really well. Turned out really well. Whoops, I got it upside down. And I just really enjoyed the method, and I love the designs. So, I mean, I will use this method for part of the stuff, and we're going to definitely use it when we do Happy Easter. So we'll start Happy Easter in March for Easter, and we're going to do the whole thing quilt as you go. So, okay, are there any other questions? I think the quilting's fun. I really enjoy quilting on the machine. It's very relaxing to sit here and quilt. And after you do several quilts on it and do several blocks, you'll get really good at it. And you can just kind of pick what you want, and it's custom quilted. If I took something to someone to have them custom quilted, it would be quite a lot of money. And long armors are wonderful, and they deserve their money. But I enjoy getting to finish it myself too, so then I can custom quilt my own quilts. So this is a way to do it if you have, and a lot of you have these machines that have this ability. So, okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to do a little more quilting tonight, and then I will see you all next week for the embellishments. So we're going to put the embellishments on this quilt. So everybody have a good evening, and if you have any questions, let me know. You can text me or message me through Facebook. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everybody.